You're listening to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, I want to talk about your brain. What's happening upstairs that might actually be changing the course of every aspect of how you run your business. And there's this little thing called flow state. I really want to tackle that and simplify that so that we all can get into the flow easier, faster, smoother, and with grace and compassion, not only for ourselves, but for our coworkers and clients. So how are we going to tackle such a big, heady, no pun intended, topic? I had to find the right guy. My friends over at the School of Calisthenics, Tim and Jacko in England, are brilliant people, and they had recommended me to our special guest today. And his name is Scott Robinson. He is in fact called the Brain Guy. He's a senior lecturer at the Academy of Applied Movement Neurology in London and also online. He's the creator of Neural Flexibility and a master healer. He's also a conscious business facilitator, presenter, and a practitioner at the Integrated Vitality Retreats, which happen to be opening back up in Bali very, very soon. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Scott Robinson. Hey, Scott.
Mary, what an introduction. Thank you for having me. It's great to get to be here and have a chat.
I'm so glad you're here. And I'll just say it now. When I heard your episodes and conversations with my very dear friends, Tim and Jacko, I was like, okay, obviously, Scott needs to come on to the Simplifiers podcast. We need to have this conversation, but I want to apply it to business because while Tim and Jacko are incredible athletes, and there is so much there, I think it can translate over into the business world, right?
Well, this is the thing. So we say you have a brain, you have a mind, and that literally governs everything in our experience. So yeah, if we have influence over the brain, influence over the mind, then we can just apply that influence to whatever area of life that we want to, and that's where we'll experience the output. And I think for me, that's when I try and explain this to people, because I think most people have an idea of the way we look at the body is we specialize, because in our medical paradigm we specialize. We've broken it up mechanically into a bunch of different pieces, and we have a specialist for each piece. But when you look at the brain, well, if the brain does everything, if we're going to have an influence over the brain, then really there's not really any area of life that we can't affect positively and in profound ways.
So physical body and peak performance there, relationships, business, all things, right?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So that's the thing. So for me, I work with all of that. And I used to say to people that we were really only limited by what I held in my awareness, because if we could only affect the things that I was aware of, and then we could sort of go to those brain circuits and go to those areas of mind, and we could play and we could improve things. But then we're kind of tapping into kind of the area that we're talking about today. I'm really excited about the topic that you've chosen to explore, because when we explore that, we really take the handbrakes off, and we start to explore the limitlessness of the mind, and then we're not even bound by my awareness or your awareness. We can literally just kind of let go and explore the limitlessness that's there, and then there's kind of limitless the results available.
And so I encourage anyone that's listening to us right now, go grab a journal, grab a pen, be very willing to press pause at any point, just let it simmer and marinate and percolate in your heart and in your mind, and take this step by step. So, Scott, I want to start first on defining what flow state is. How would you define that, and what's actually happening inside our brain when we want to get into the flow?
Okay, so I think the way most people know it, I'll explain it in this context first, is via sport and via athletes. And so we hear these high-level athletes tell stories about everything just slowed down, time slowed down, it's the sound everything went silent. And I just knew what was going to happen, and I could see it, and I could see it unfold before it even happened, and I had all the time in the world, and it was maybe only a period of 3 or 4 seconds, but it felt like 3 or 4 minutes. And so for me, I used to be a high-level athlete, and I only experienced that once, but it was like a buzzer beater play. I was fighting in Taekwondo. It was Belgian Open, quarterfinal. I was down by 2 points, a couple of seconds to go, and that happened. Yeah. Everything slowed down. I literally saw I saw my footprints light up on the ring, on the mat in front of me. I saw the footsteps that I needed to take light up, and I saw exactly what the other guy was going to do. I saw exactly what I was going to do, and within a couple of seconds, I scored 2 points and won the fight. And nobody knew what happened or how it could possibly have happened. It was the most surreal experience. The way we would explain that in more neuroscientific terms is that what we're talking about is our brain slowing down to a theta state, which means your brain waves, or essentially you're slowing the world down. You can look at it and say, some people explain it in terms of the brain going into a gamma state, as in literally brainwaves are going so fast that everything else slows right down. I believe it happens both ways. I believe that it happens when you go into a theta state as well, because when we go into a theta state, we can have expanded awareness. And essentially that's what we're experiencing. We're experiencing expanded awareness. So we're literally slowing the world down around us, potentially because we are just calculating and we are processing at such a phenomenal speed and phenomenal rate so that it makes everything feel like it's slowed down. And potentially it's because we have just expanded our awareness so far that we're literally just pulling in so much information, and we're just able to have a conscious experience where we're consciously processing that in the moment. Then we can do something with it. But essentially what we're really talking about is we're talking about putting these invisible wheels in motion, invisible wheels in the universe in motion for us, and we're making things happen. And so when we're doing that, essentially what we're doing is you can call it being aligned with universal energy, you can call it just being aligned with your true energy, you can call it just being in sync with all of the energy around you, but essentially you're pulling in all of this information, making sense of it, and then you're able to see the result unfolding and then participate in that. The way my clients explain it to me, the words that I hear back most frequently with the people that I work with, is it just feels like life is rigged in my favor, or it literally just it feels like literally everything, the universe is working for me. And essentially, I would say it's if you don't experience what we call higher sense or high sense perception. So if you don't have your perceptual range that's expanded beyond the normal regular 5 physical senses, then all of this stuff we're talking about, footsteps lighting up on a mat in front of you or invisible wheels in the universe turning and making things around you work for you, all of that sounds a bit like magic, and it sounds, basically just because we can't perceive it. But it doesn't mean that that's not happening. If we were able to perceive those mechanisms and see them actually in play, well, then we'd look at it and say like, oh, okay, I can see how that's working. But essentially we're creating on a subconscious level, we are creating a vibration, and we can do that via our beliefs, we can do that via our actions, but we're creating a vibration. And if we bring others around us and other things around us into resonance with that vibration, and where that vibration is created by clear, coherent thought, so clear, coherent thought energy about my purpose. In that example that I gave, I need to score 2 points. I need to score 2 points. I've got about 2 seconds to do it. And, and so there's a clear, coherent thought, there's a clear, coherent intention, and you bring other energies and other energy fields into resonance with that vibration. And when other things are in resonance, then they're vibrating on your frequency, which means you're making them work at your rhythm. And essentially that's the way we describe the flow state. I think that's how that makes sense in a sporting context. But then again, you can apply that to anything. In a business context, it's going to look like the phone rings at precisely the right time with the offer that you need right when you need it, or literally that report that you needed just gets delivered to you right on time. Or somebody who's about to do a big piece of work for you, just for no apparent reason, just calls to get your opinion and check in because they just had an intuition that, you had some information that you needed to add to that, or there was a consideration that needed to be made. And so it's those invisible wheels in the universe that you're putting in play via your coherent thought, your clear, coherent intention.
And I'd like for everyone that's listening right now, just take a moment and pause. What has happened in, say, the last week or so that was just aligned with what Scott was talking about? Just a strange coincidence, air quotes, synchronicity, something that's been dropped down into your timeline of your life that speak and resonate to this. Because I think it's so fascinating to me, Scott, and I really feel like only in the last couple of years have I started to awaken myself and realize that there's something way deeper at work here than I ever realized. And I think that for so many of us, we just go so unconscious through our life. We jam pack our schedules with busyness and noise so that we don't have to actually ever, reflect on this stuff. Yeah, think about this, or even have moment to breathe or be aware. And then what happens in that cyclone of busy is days, weeks, months, years go by in a blink. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm 50 or I'm 70 or what happened? What was all that?
The scariest movie I ever saw was the Adam Sandler movie Click, where he gets the remote control the remote control to life, and he starts fast forwarding through life. But then the remote control he's fast forwarding to get to the good bits that he wants to, his promotion or intimate relations with his wife. But then the remote control has an auto preference function, and it just starts automatically fast forwarding his way through his life. And I remember looking at that, it's probably 15 years ago. I remember and it scared the life out of me because I just retired from competition and I'd started working full time, and it was all consuming. And I remember looking at thinking, and I was kind of starting to experience work stress. Yeah. I hadn't identified it at that point as what it was, but I was experiencing work stress. And I kind of realized, that could happen. I could blink and it's going to be 20 years. I could miss my whole life if I'm not careful.
Yeah.
And I think it's a huge point. So it's just, I would say it comes down to predominantly, it's more complex than this, but predominantly two issues. And we look at stress and the effect of stress on the brain, and the fact that the brain is trying to go unconscious. The brain is it's encouraging us to do that and trying to get us on the autopilot. And so the brain demands a huge amount of energy, which means, and from an evolutionary standpoint, it just wants to survive. And it knows, quote unquote, it knows that its best chances of surviving is if it can be incredibly efficient about its energy consumption. And so the way it's more efficient about its energy consumption is by just running programs. If it just runs automated programs, then that consumes way less energy than consciously having to calculate and compute every moment in your day. So when you talk about going unconscious, that's precisely what the brain's trying to do. It's just trying to get us into patterns and just get us doing those same patterns day in, day out.
And that's case in point where you're driving your kids to school and you don't even remember the drive at all. Or
completely.
You go grocery shopping and you buy the same exact things because that's just your brain's turned off.
It's just what you do.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And then when we overlay that with stress, so when we experience stress, we lose access, or at least we lose a degree of access to the conscious mind. And the conscious mind is that most magnificent part of the brain that it's what makes us human. It's the most highly evolved part of the brain. And so when we lose access to that, we literally have blood gets shunted to the brainstem, which is the most ancient part of the brain, and we call that the reptilian brain. And then when we're there, we're far more reflexive. So we're far more reflexive. We're more emotionally reactive, and we're less intelligent. We're by definition less intelligent at that point. So you kind of think about it, if the brain's trying to get us to run on autopilot, and then I'm going to experience stress where I've got less intelligence at my disposition. Well, my experience of life has to be greatly reduced, and really I'm just going to fall back onto patterns. And because I'm less intelligent in that moment, they're probably not going to be the patterns that I'd ideally choose. And so many people, I think, just end up in these patterns, and we can be there for such a long period of time. And so you're getting conscious and getting that clear, coherent thought, and getting yourself aligned with who you truly are and what you're truly here to do. That's really, really powerful. And I think once we start to experience that, well, then we're sort of starting to tiptoe down that road to maybe eventually getting ourselves into that flow state.
So I've been really fascinated in reading books and learning as much as I can, just absorbing like a sponge when it comes to this stuff. So Kim Chesney with her book on radical intuition, or Dr. Joe Dispenza and Becoming Supernatural, those kinds of things. Love for you to break it down in as simple of terms as possible. And I think you have started the unconscious, the conscious, and the superconscious. Can you break that down and simplify it for us?
Okay, so for our own simplicity and understanding, because we're a systematic animal and we like patterns and we like to have a mechanistic understanding of things, we have one mind, but we've divided it up into, for the purpose of understanding, we've kind of divided it up into three sections. So we've divided it into a conscious section, a subconscious section, and an unconscious section. Mm-hmm. A superconscious section. So our conscious mind is literally what we're using to just sort of chat now. That's literally 5% of our total brain processing. So 5% of our processing is conscious. We have a conscious awareness of literally only 5% of what's going on in the brain. Wow. The other 95% is unconscious, or we can call it our subconscious mind. Now, in the subconscious mind exist all of our subconscious beliefs. Now, these subconscious beliefs, they're just thought. It's literally just thought that's in the subconscious mind. But because the subconscious mind, it doesn't think critically, it doesn't analytically, it doesn't analyze things, it doesn't argue, it doesn't debate. It just accepts. It's like a little kid. It's like a child. So if a thought reaches the subconscious mind, then it just gets taken on as a belief. Now, once that thought goes in as a belief, well, then because that's a belief, that's now a rule. That actually is a rule in the mind, and it's governing function. And because it's governing function, it's now running programs. So that belief then creates a program. And all of these programs exist in our mind, which we run for our automated behaviors and our choices and our biases and our preferences and our perceptions and what we're predicting that we're going to experience in our day-to-day. And so we're literally just falling back on those subconscious programs for huge amounts of our day. And so this is what we're talking about. If we can get conscious and we can bring more of our experience into our conscious awareness, then we can place our clear, coherent intention for what we truly want onto our life, and then we can start to act more consciously. Now, when we look at the superconscious mind, so your superconscious mind is a level of mind that everybody has and nearly everybody denies. So your superconscious mind is literally your connection to all the information in the universe. And I don't mind what you call it. Superconscious works well for people. You can call it your connection to the universe. You can call it your connection to God, connection to spirit, connection to consciousness, call it your higher self. I really don't mind what you want to call it. Yeah. The biggest thing that you can do is just acknowledge that you have one. Yeah. Just acknowledge that you have that connection, because once you acknowledge that, well, then you can actually start to draw something from that. As long as we're sort of sitting and saying, no, well, look, science says that doesn't exist, or, my belief is I've never experienced it, so it can't be a thing. If I'm denying it, well, then yes, you can 100%, you can prove me wrong that it doesn't exist because you won't experience it. Right. So your superconscious mind is kind of there and it's available, but only if you choose to look at it and actually choose to be open to it. So that superconscious mind wants to keep you safe, and it wants to align you with your highest expression of life. So your highest expression or your purpose. So if we choose to open to the information that's available from that superconscious mind, the superconscious if we get good at it, we can bring information from the superconscious directly into the conscious space, but your superconscious can just download things into your subconscious mind. So if we're talking about downloading information, as in new beliefs, new programs, if we can download that information into the subconscious and we can actually just take that on board, well, then we can just see that play out in new behaviors and new choices and new states of mind, new levels of mind. And so tapping into that is an incredibly powerful thing. And so I work in a healing space with people, and I'm forever saying to people that if we want to allow that, if we want to let that level of information come into the process, then we can get an absolutely miraculous result, and that's available pretty much every single time. Same thing when I work with clients in business. We can get miraculous results pretty much every single time. Mm-hmm. But if we want to deny that that's available or deny that it even exists, well, then literally all we're doing is then I just become like every other practitioner out there, and we just fall back onto my memory and experience. And so then we're just dealing with, okay, it's just my clinical best guess as to, I've seen 20 other people who had a similar condition to you, 14 of them presented a certain way, so I'm going to guess that you're going to be like them, and we'll do what roughly work for those people, and we're just guessing at that point. But there's a higher level of information that's available to all of us, and if we want to pay attention to it, we can get what appear to be miraculous results.
So much there to unpack. And it really, thank you so much for breaking it down in those three ways. I think that hopefully is building a picture in people's minds to apply it into both their work life and their life, their whole self, all of it. And I guess my question because I can imagine my most pessimistic friend in my head right now wanting to go, yeah, but I have him very clearly in my mind right now. Yeah, but Scott, how do you know that that's like when you hear these like downloads, those divine nudges, if you so well go, how do you know if that's real? Like, how do you know if that's the right thing or if it's in fact your inner critic speaking, to differentiate between the two voices?
Okay, so it's what do you align yourself with? And it's like, so we can set a clear intention for truth, clear intention. So again, you have that level of mind which is connected to the truth, like the truth in the universe, not just the perceptual truth, the truth that we've perceived in humanity, because we observe things and then we try and figure them out and then we call that truth.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that our scientific paradigm's done a bad job. It's just to say we can only work with what we've observed.
Yeah.
And our scientific paradigm is evidence-based, which is great, but evidence-based only tells us what's happened in the past. So it doesn't tell us, doesn't predict what's going to happen in the future, other than something's happened really consistently in the past. And so that's really all we're saying. Now, so with the superconscious mind, and how do we understand that? How do we know we're getting that information? I love the words. There's a book by Sarah Rowland around your third eye, Third Eye Awakenings, I think it was called. And I remember her words in there and it's basically speaking to the same level of mind. And she was talking about gaining intuition and learning to have intuition. Her words were, and they were beautiful. It was just start a conversation, start a dialogue with your higher self. And what made the most sense to me was when she said, start a conversation with your higher self. It'll be a one-way conversation for a while. But at some point, if you just keep that dialogue going, you'll start to receive something back. So for that skeptical mind, you can start a conversation with your higher self. And if the first thing you do is say, what's the truth of this situation for me here right now? Higher self, please tell me. I need to know. And then I just hear silence. Well, at that point, if I just look at it and say, waste of time, didn't work. Yep, he was full of it. Well, then I've just shut off to that in the future. So what I've just done is I've just reinforced a limiting belief that I don't have that available. Okay, and again, like I said, if you want to prove, if anyone wants to prove me wrong, you can make yourself right about your ideas and your beliefs, and we can all do that. We can all create our own reality around that. So I'm not going to argue with anybody who feels skeptical about it. But what happens in your brain is when you pay attention, and remember, you're accessing 5% consciously. There's 95% going on below your conscious level of awareness. So your brain is understanding and perceiving things that you're not consciously aware of. So if I want to sit here and say, no, that didn't exist because in 5% of that finite box that's up there in my head, I wasn't aware of anything. So that I'm sorry, it didn't happen. Well, I've just shut off to the possibilities of what may unfold down the track. Now, my experience in healing and how all this sort of worked for me, and I think this will hopefully give people an understanding of how this can develop, I just applied what I knew to be true from movement to intuition. And what I knew from movement was that if I just place my attention on something that I don't understand around the context of movement or something in the body, my brain's going to look at that and it's going to figure it out. It will look to solve that problem for me. And I'm probably not going to have the answer consciously initially, but if I just keep placing my attention on that subject, if I just keep going back there, my brain's going to figure it out on a subconscious level. And at some point, my subconscious is going to be kind enough to just pass that off into the conscious, into conscious awareness.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'll have a light bulb.
And it makes,
I'll feel like, wow, I get it.
Yeah. It makes me remind me of, where you put your focus is where the energy flows, right? So
yeah, where your attention goes is where your energy flows, 100%. And then we say, and that's where neural connection grows. So where your attention goes, energy flows and neural connection grows. And this is exactly what we're talking about. So for me in a healing space, I previously subscribed very much to the physicality of the world. And I believed that, we needed to have touch to be able to transfer anything. And I didn't believe that the thoughts and feelings and emotions could transfer. I didn't believe that any of these sensations or these energies could transfer. But what I started experiencing with people was I'd be working with complex dysfunctions in the immune system or in the gastrointestinal system or pain, and I'd start feeling the symptoms. I'd start feeling something in my gut, and it was like, hang on, I'm working with the small intestine and I'm feeling a pain somewhere in my body that feels very much like where the small intestine's supposed to be. Like, that did not make sense to me, and it actually scared me. I found it quite frightening and really disturbing, because that upset my reality. So that completely disturbed the reality that I had set up for myself and the way my brain was attempting to keep me safe. My brain was attempting to keep me safe by predicting everything about my existence around the rules that governed my reality. And when I started experiencing pains and sensations that weren't mine, they were from someone else's body in front of me, that completely messed with my reality, and it felt really scary.
It shakes up the rule book, everything that you believed, right?
Absolutely. And so then for me, the thing became, I looked at it and thought, well, hang on, do I want to do this? Is this safe? But I thought, no, this feels like it's truly me. I feel like I'm in the right space. I really love doing this work, and I think I could be good at it at some point. So that, you know what, I'm just going to place my attention on it. And I don't, with no expectation of understanding it. But when I feel these sensations, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to look at it, try and understand, and just ask for understanding, or just look and just with the intention of understanding. And for a long time, nothing came. I didn't understand it. But then eventually I started getting these insights. I'm like, it's the body in front of me guiding me as to where I need to go. It's literally pointing me to the next step, and it's showing me where I need to go. And I was getting all of this information that initially just scared me. And then once I placed my attention on it, my subconscious understood it first. My subconscious understood it completely first. And then once it understood it enough, it just passed that information off to my conscious mind. And then I had conscious awareness. And we call that intuition. Yeah. And that's basically how you develop it. And every time you experience those things and you place your attention on them, you're creating new synaptic connections, new neural connections around that level of information. So the information that you believe that you have no experience of, that you believe you have no connection to, or you believe that that just doesn't exist, all you need to do is place your attention in that space. Your subconscious will pick it up. Your subconscious will build enough connections around it until you just reach a critical mass of neural connections, and eventually then you can have conscious understanding. And again, then we just say, okay, I've got amazing intuition around that. But that's a process that you've built and created.
And what you just said there reminds me, and it's akin to, in the physical world, the first time I ever went scuba diving. Very scary going under the water. You can train for hours in a pool, but when you actually get out in the ocean, it's a whole other experience. And the very first time you do it, anything, it's very, very scary. But with repetition becomes mastery, but with also a deepening of the work. And it sounds like that's what's at play here, that permission to trust that there is a deeper oneness or connectivity with all things, all people, that there is some wisdom that you can tap into. I think, it's scary as hell to say that out loud, but in reality, when you give yourself permission to do it and be open to it, and with repetition, the fear goes away, right? It dissipates. And then you go, and it's a much deeper understanding of how the world works, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's different ways to go about it. So what you've described, you can go about it via repetition. And those people who are open and who are progressive and want to explore like new heights, new levels of mind, new states of being, they're probably familiar with those processes, and they're probably familiar with, like, you know what, I'm just going to put myself in that space. I'm going to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I'm going to figure it out. And then via repetition, I'm just going to remind myself with positive reinforcement, I didn't die. I'm actually okay. I survived. I think I'm all right. And over time, I can have enough of those experiences that potentially I can take on that information, and it can go through that buffer of conscious noise. It can reach the subconscious space, and then potentially I can create a new subconscious belief around I am safe in this situation, or I am capable. I work with it very differently. I'll just go to this subconscious mind. We'll download the information we need from the superconscious. What is the perfect belief? What is the perfect program that this body, this mind needs in this moment to express this new level of mind and this new level of function?
Yeah.
Superconscious has the information. It'll give us the information. We'll then just create a belief and put it in. And then you can just walk away and have it. And that's very, very different. But when you're working with it on your own, obviously, if you don't have those skills, it's a little bit slower, but we can all still do it. Again, it comes down to, like we said, clear, coherent intention. So clear, coherent thought about what do I want to achieve? What do I want out of this? And then hold your attention in that space and just stay in that space and don't judge it. Don't judge it with your previous limitations, your previous limiting level of mind. Just be open to allowing it. Exactly as we just described in those stories about me with healing, and exactly what you just talked about with scuba diving. You can get an incredible result, and then before you know it, you're operating at a new level.
And there are no coincidences. This reminds me of a conversation I had recently with Amira Alvarez, and she's talking about how to, on a business level, how to make an income breakthrough. And it's all back to the same thing. She's saying the same exact things, but just slightly in different lenses of how her own personal journey of expanding her consciousness of belief of what's possible helped her go from, making roughly $30,000 a year to $126,000 a year to seven figures. And so, when you hear those stories, you go, yeah, that's right, whatever.
But
that's my friend, right? But what if it is? And it is, in fact. That I think that that's what we're saying here is that this is, again, like athletes who train to achieve high performance. It's the same thing. Learning to tap into that brain as as the control center, as you say.
Yeah. So let me explain this a couple of ways really quickly. The brain is the greatest virtual reality machine in the known universe, or in our known universe. And the brain, it's egotistical. It needs to make itself right. So if it believes something, because it's got to make you feel safe, it has to make that reality right for itself, and then it relaxes. Then it's okay, good. Yep, no, that reality that I've got, that I'm basing all of my predictions around how I'm keeping you safe and keeping you alive, yep, no, that's good. I've got that, perfect. So if it has a belief and then the world around it doesn't fit with that belief, it'll just change the world because it needs to make itself right. So how about we just change our beliefs and then we can change the world around us? So the brain, as I said, it will literally make itself right about anything. So if I hold a belief that I am not worthy of having a high income, if I believe that, and so I'll put this, because I've dealt with this with myself with money and finance. And I don't know how I managed to create this belief for myself, but I created a limiting belief around money. And it was pretty much along the lines of I was earning good money. I was very comfortable with that. I was happy charging people, happy earning everything, and everybody was happy paying. I was giving a good service, people were getting good value. And then I decided that, I kind of realized my purpose was in this healing space. And for some reason, I decided that for people to know that I was truly authentic, money couldn't really be attached to that. If I was charging them money, then they must sort of feel like I'm inauthentic about, there's an ulterior motive that perhaps I just want the money. So I stopped asking for it. I literally just stopped asking for money because I wanted people to know that I was for some strange reason, I wanted people to sort of believe that I was more genuine, and that by not asking for money, that would do that. And then it was it was absolutely ridiculous because I was a personal trainer at the time. But I'd started doing rehabilitation, and I was trying to help people in all these different, more profound ways. And the problem was that people were paying me these big bulk packages. So I had enough. I had enough money to survive. But I'm married to an accountant, and this approach to life really didn't work. We were getting to the point where I was owed $20,000, $30,000. There was one point I was owed $60,000 because I just wasn't asking for it. And the other problem was all my clients were pretty good. So when I would ask for it, they'd all just pay, and the money would come in. So I just stopped asking. But then it came in a conversation, and then I just created a new belief around it, and everything changed. I was talking with a woman who just said, it's all about a balanced exchange of energy, Scott. You need to have a balanced exchange of energy in everything. And money's just an energy. It's one energy. It's like you're giving energy to these people and you're taking nothing back. You're just going to kill yourself. Okay. And that just gave me permission. Then I realized that was the spark of awareness that just gave me permission. And then I just changed the beliefs that I held around money. And then all of a sudden I had no problem again. And then everything was fine. So if you have a belief somewhere deep in your psyche that you're not worthy, or that, because you've downloaded a parental belief because the parents didn't have money, and so then you hold the parents' belief that, you're just not supposed to have money, well, the brain will find ways to create that, and we call it self-sabotage. We just literally pull the rug out from under our own feet, and then we just find ourselves not ever accumulating or not having the abundance that's actually available. But when we change that, we literally put those invisible wheels in the universe in play, in motion for us, and the new job can turn up, or the new opportunity just suddenly just appears, and and it's literally just you change. We're each creating our own reality, which means we live in a universe of infinite realities. And if you decide to have clear, coherent thought, what you're doing is you are bringing other people around you into resonance with your clear, coherent thought. And if that happens to be around money and abundance, well, then perfect. You're not hurting anybody else. You just bring other people into resonance with you, and you create the abundance that you desire. And so at its heart, and this is true in healing and with high performance and pretty much with everything, it all comes down at its base level. It comes down to a level of thought energy. And so when we have that clear, coherent thought, and what I mean by clear, coherent thought, because I keep repeating it, is if you have a goal, and this is the people we see on goalcast.com telling inspirational stories, they're people who have held an idea in mind and stuck to it. They've stuck to it and they haven't wavered. They haven't wavered from their path. So what they're doing is they're holding a frequency of thought that is consistent. And so they're creating energy, and they're creating, and everything in our physical material world is energy first. It's energy first. Energy is an epiphenomenon or matter is an epiphenomenon of energy. So it's energy first, and then we create matter from that. So they're holding a clear, coherent thought energy about one particular purpose, and then they begin to create a material reality around that one thought. If you're not holding clear, coherent, and consistent thought, then your energy is going off in one direction where I think I want to do this at work, but then, I've got these other parental beliefs that sort of keep me locked into this existence where I kind of believe like I need to give some money away. Yeah. And then, I'm also a parent, and parents, we just struggle financially, and so I've got those beliefs, and my energy is going in one direction, but then when it goes off in the other direction, that cancels this first direction out, and then this energy going in the other direction, I just literally create nothing because I'm not holding that consistent thought pattern. So, and that's what we do when we talk about getting into the subconscious space. If we create subconscious beliefs, your subconscious belief is running all the time. Right. It's 95% of the brain. So you've literally changed the frequency in 95% of your mind, which means that that's what's running all the time. So if I'm just consciously going to say, you know what, I am abundant. I am living an abundant life. That's only going to be happening in the times when I remember it and when I can quiet the subconscious mind, which is probably when I'm going to be in meditation so only a few moments a day am I going to be able to maintain that. If I can get those thoughts and those beliefs into the subconscious mind, well, then that's running all the time. And then in those moments when I remember, it's more effortless because subconscious is already doing that for me. All I'm doing is aligning my conscious mind with the subconscious mind at that point. And then literally everything goes into flow because I've aligned the levels of mind together. And so if I then have, sorry to cut you off, if I then have my subconscious beliefs, my conscious actions aligned with the truth of who I am from the superconscious mind, and all levels of mind are aligned together, well, then that's when we're talking about getting those invisible wheels in the universe together, and we go into that flow state because everything's working for us.
Scott, I think you were in flow state for the last 5 minutes. I'm just going to say. No, you've said so much, and I feel like as a collective, we should all take a nice deep inhale.
Deep breath.
And just download what he just said, because I think there's so much to that that you just shared. And it's so beautiful to just witness you in your flow state, sharing all these things that you've learned working with clients and your own journey of understanding how the brain works. Woof. Scott is one smart cookie, isn't he? Let me just repeat back slowly what he just said there at the end. Friends, the magic in life is found when you align these three things: your subconscious beliefs, your conscious actions, and the truth of who you really are, which is known in your superconscious. That's when you achieve flow state. So I encourage you to take that and simmer on it all week long. What limiting beliefs are holding you back right now, keeping you from achieving what you really want in your work and life? Now, realize that these are deeply embedded into your subconscious, and that's what's actually keeping you from getting into the flow. In part 2 of our conversation next week, we're actually going to talk more about the how to transform these limiting beliefs and residual stress that might be holding you back, how to tap into that higher intelligence and wisdom that he talks about. It's going to bring you less anxiety and more calm. And then how to translate this into the teams that you lead in the various aspects of your work and life so that you actually can create a conscious business. It's all coming up next week. But for now, let's just pause, breathe, and take in everything that he just shared and let it really sink in this week. I hope that you realize what you seek is on its way to you right now. And I really look forward to hearing your thoughts on this episode. So reach out and DM me on Instagram @the Simplifiers, and let's spark a conversation. But until then, keep going. You're doing great. It's time to simplify. You're listening to the Simplifiers podcast, episode number 162. Last week we talked about getting into the flow, what it is, and why it's worth simplifying. And it was such a juicy episode. I decided to split it into 2 parts so that we had time to simmer on it all. Since part 1 focused on the what and the why, this week we're talking all about the how. My special guest today is, yet once again, the brain guy, Scott Robinson, and he's simplifying how to get into the flow. Remember, the most important thing to keep in mind, no pun intended, is this. When you align these 3 things, your subconscious beliefs, your conscious actions, and the truth of who you really are, which is known deep, deep, deep down in your superconscious, that's when you achieve flow state. So let's break all of that down and simplify it. Here's how. He shares how to transform any limiting beliefs or residual stress that might be holding you back right now, especially if you have any business mistakes or blunders that are causing you a little bit of self-sabotage. Plus, what the collective consciousness is, and how to utilize this concept as a leader of your team, much the same like a flock of birds or a school of fish moving in unison. And how to tap into a higher intelligence and wisdom. It's going to bring you less anxiety and more sense of calm. And ultimately, how to identify and squash any shared stress that might be lurking inside your workplace, either spoken or unspoken, so that you can become a more conscious business. Scott talks about the wisdom in moving from a physical to a conscious-based reality, and I certainly see some truth in that. If our perception of how the world works is simply built on stories that we've told ourselves since we were very, very little, it does make me wonder, what stories am I ready to let go of? Which narratives may have served me in the first 40 years of my life, but they aren't serving me anymore? What can I surrender, and how nice will it feel when I lay them down? I really invite you to consider these questions and more. Have a journal and a pen ready to jot down some notes while listening to this one. And don't be afraid to press pause anytime you need to. Also, if you haven't heard part 1 yet of this conversation, I really encourage you to actually go ahead, hit pause now, and go back and listen to that one first. As always, this journey of exploration that we are on is exhilarating, and I'm so glad that you're with me, riding alongside my ride or die as I ask the questions you guys want me to ask. This conversation is such a gift, and I'm so grateful for you tuning in and also sharing it with someone you love. Okay, guys, it's time to simplify. But before we dive into this episode, I want to tell you about a new thing that we're doing over here at the Simplifiers. Once a month, I'm leading a cohort of no more than 10 business owners through the process of creating your own simplified business plan. In 4 short weeks, you're going to get super clear on the 9 key aspects of your business, including defining your unforgettable value proposition, clarifying your ultimate ideal client, setting your pricing strategy, and so much more. So, if you're ready to receive absolute clarity that's going to help you boost your revenue, get unstuck, and be ready to bounce back stronger than ever before, then reach out and do the thing. As an introductory rate, this 4-week program is now offered at $299, and past clients say it's worth every penny. Schedule a free discovery call to see if it's right for you. Visit thesimplifiers.com/hello. That's thesimplifiers.com/hello, and make sure to select the 25-minute call option when you book it in. Easy peasy, super simple. Now, the next cohort starts Tuesday, April 6th, 2021, and the deadline to join us is Friday, April 2nd. And hey, if you're ready to join now and want to bypass the discovery call, hey, awesome. Simply go over to thesimplifiers.com/shop and reserve your spot today. And thank you so much for double tapping that subscribe button. We've got listeners now in 122 countries around the world. So hello to our listeners in New York, Pasco, Edinburgh, and our new friends in Nepal. We're so glad you're tuning in. Okay, it's time now to dive into part 2 of today's episode with the brain guy, Scott Robinson, as he simplifies how to get into the flow. Are you ready? Let's dive in. No, you've said so much, and I feel like as a collective, we should all take a nice deep inhale.
Deep breath.
And just download what he just said, because I think there's so much to that that you just shared. And it's so beautiful to just witness you in your flow state, sharing all these things that you've learned working with clients and your own journey of understanding how the brain works. I think... Can
I just share with you really quickly,
Yeah.
because this will make sense, exactly what you've just said. So I got up this morning and meditated before we got together.
Yeah.
And then in my meditation, and this is a take home for people, because exactly what I did this morning is exactly what everybody can do, is I just sat down and said, okay, what do we want out of this today?
Yes.
So, okay, I'm just going to look at the notes that you sent me for what we want to run through today. Roughly, I don't really want to pay a huge amount of attention to them. I just want them in my awareness.
Yes.
And now I'm just going to sit down, and what's my intention? Well, my intention is perfection. Perfection is going to be a consciousness-based reality perfection, as in I want the universe working for me, give me the information that I need so that I can just be in the flow state and just give the perfect information
Yes.
that this lovely lady on the other end of the call is looking to receive. And then we just end up finding ourselves in a monologue, and then I get a comment back saying like, wow, you're just in a flow state. That was beautiful. And which is exactly what we just set up, what I set up as an intention to happen this morning.
Yeah.
So that's something that everybody can do. Get up, set a clear intention first thing at the start of the day for what you want to happen. Not a specific outcome. Focus on the process. As in for me, I just want this to be a perfect process. I just want this to be a perfect experience. That's it.
Yeah, and I want to clarify, when you use the word perfect, it's not perfection as in I have to get it all right. I think that perfect, when I hear you use that word, and correct me if I'm wrong, is limitless. It's beautiful. It's that
and true.
Yeah, and true. Absolutely. You know what I think?
The thing I work with.
Yeah, no, one big quick before you go in.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting in what you just shared is when you set your intention, you set that clear, coherent goal. You're also setting an identity for yourself that says, I am this. I know my friend Jacko and I have had this conversation. He is an athlete. He has a core belief that he is an athlete. And so, everything that he does in his 1,000 daily choices in a day help him to have that core belief that he is an athlete, and he has, the 20-pack of abs and can do superhuman things physically with his body. Is it a bit of that? Like, when you set that clear, coherent goal, you're setting an identity, that core belief of who you are, so that your brain is finding the neural pathways and saying, here are the data points that say, yes, this is me. This is who I am. I am worthy of making 7 figures. I am an athlete. I am worthy of blah, 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 blah. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so your brain, like I said, your brain will just make it real. You put the belief in, the brain will make it real. So let me give you a quick example, just so based in movement again, because this, again, and you can apply this to anything. You can apply it to business, you can apply it to sport, apply it to relationships. So I've got a lady that I work with physically, so I see her face to face. She's 72. She's 72, and she's a weapon. She's known as Ali the Weapon. She can do muscle ups. She can do handstands. You know, she's for a 72-year-old grandma. She's amazing.
Incredible.
But she wanted to do a back bend. She wanted to do like a back bridge. So bending over, hands on the ground, feet on the ground, back arching up in the air. And she was nowhere near it. Too stiff. Couldn't get the shoulders over. Just absolutely couldn't do it. So we regressed it. We put her feet up on a box, and she could actually hold a position with her head. She couldn't get her head off the ground. Her head was resting on the ground, and the hands were barely flat. Like there was big, obvious restrictions in range of movement. And so what I do when I'm working with people, and this again applies to anything, we're just applying it to movement here, but we'll just ask the nervous system, ask the brain, ask the mind, what do you need? Okay, here's our goal. This is what we want. What do you need? Where's the weak link in the chain that we need to fix up? And so we ask for her, like, does her system need flexibility? Does it need extra strength? Does it need neurological calibration? Does it need to be potentiated? Does it need like a boost of extra strength? Does it need a belief? In her case, it just came up as a belief. Now, interestingly, we got a message from her superconscious which basically said, you need to look at your granddaughter. She pulled a photo, it guided her into her purse and pulled out a photo of her granddaughter. And she had just been telling me that her granddaughter looked at her in amazement and wonder because grandma could do handstands. And we said, well, there's your message. Literally, your superconscious is telling you that you need to look at yourself in the same way that your granddaughter looks at you, with amazement and wonder, which was really poignant because she's really hard on herself. And so then we said, okay, so what would it be? What would it be? What would it take for you to look at yourself in this situation in amazement and wonder? And it came back that she needed to look at herself like she was an Olympic gymnast. Now, she's a 72-year-old grandma who has absolutely no context of ever having been an Olympic gymnast. She has nothing like that in her physical conscious awareness. But her mind can build a picture around that. So we put in a new belief, the belief that was 100% right, according to what her superconscious was telling us, that her subconscious mind needed, was that she was as fit, as strong, supple, flexible, and coordinated as an Olympic gymnast. We put that in, put her back on the box, and she literally pushed herself up. Her feet were up on the box, but she pushed herself off the ground, hands were flat, back arched way more. Like, it was an amazing result. But the incredible thing to me, the most important incredible thing to me about it was, as soon as she did that, I was there going like, okay, that's fantastic, amazing. You know, you don't actually look like an Olympic gymnast, but that's an incredible change in 10 seconds. Yeah. But then when she came down, the first thing she did was let out this almighty groan and go, it's terrible. Like, I'm not an Olympic gymnast. It was so hard. So she literally told her subconscious mind. So her subconscious mind is trying to figure out, it's trying to make this new belief real. And it's just taken a really big step in the first step in that direction. And if she encourages it and pats herself on the back and says, wow, amazing, and celebrates that, because the subconscious mind is like a child's mind, that little kid in there is going to look and go, oh, so I got that right. Okay, I'm on the right track. And it'll keep producing more changes. But the first thing she did was go, oh, terrible. And that poor subconscious mind, which actually was getting it right, then looks and goes, oh, okay, I think I got it. I thought I was getting it right. I think I'll try something else. And so we do that a lot. You know, we sometimes we actually get it right. We take the right steps. We move ourselves in the right direction by influencing the subconscious mind. But then, because we've overlaid our own projection of what we think the result has to look like, and what our subconscious produces is pretty much always going to be different to what our conscious projection is. When they don't match up, we can then just knock it on the head. And so that's a big take home. Be really careful to just don't project. We don't need to project. We don't need to be outcome focused or outcome oriented. We can just be process oriented. That really messes with people's heads sometimes when you say that, because people identify themselves as a goal focused individual. Like, yes, create the goal, that's fine, but then you don't have to sit and focus on it, because what you're locking yourself into one conscious pathway there. Create the goal and then just go back to the process and just allow the process to unfold as perfectly as it needs to. And you can find that there's your flow state.
I think that analogy is beautiful, and thank you for sharing it, because I think we've all been in situations similar to that, whether in work or just in our regular everyday life. And how many times have we ever gone into a sales pitch meeting or a competition of some sort, or about to take the stage and speak at a conference, and you've already determined the outcome to be negative, right? You've already said in your head, oh, this is going to be a disaster, or no, they're never going to like it, or they're not going to have a clue what I'm talking about, or whatever.
And then get to the end and go, see, told you.
Right, yeah. You predetermined the success, right, or failure of a situation before you even tried. And I think that's a gentle, wonderful reminder for us to not predetermine. It's almost... I've heard other people speak of this, and I've seen it true in my own life. It's a concept of surrender, but also holding loosely a situation. I think whenever I personally try to hold tight, grip it with an iron fist, that's where things start to crumble. But if I can hold it loosely, that points back to Buddhism, right?
Yeah, let's address it with a question. So those conscious projections, so I make a goal and I decide what it needs to look like.
Yeah.
I decide my goal and I decide what it needs to look like, and then I decide the process. And that's when we're working with this very limited level of mind, the conscious level of mind, which is 5%. 5% of what we've got available.
Right.
So, and basically I've decided how it needs to look. I've probably decided I go back to memory and experience, and I create a plan from all of my memory and my experience that I think can be successful in getting me to my goal. Okay, great. Sounds good. And I think that's probably most success manuals. That's 5%. I'm accessing 5% of what's available. So if we look at it and say, if I have a connection to all the information in the universe and I literally have another 95% untapped going on in this most magnificent organ that's going on, in this limitless organ that's going on in my head, and that we don't fully understand, why would I limit my goal about what's actually possible and the ways to get there and the way that it needs to look and how it can unfold? Why would I limit that to only my conscious mind, which is 5%? Why could I think of any good reason why I wouldn't just let go and say, there's more available? You know what? I'm just going to be open to that.
That's like having a tool belt and going, well, 95% of these tools, I don't really need it. I think I'm only going to need the screwdriver. Good luck.
Yeah. So, and I say this to clients when we're working with relationships, because in relationships, so we work on relationships, we work on intimacy and all this sort of stuff. And again, it's all perception. It all comes from the mind.
Yeah.
And so I've said a few times now, when we're dealing with sex and intimacy, we say, I would very, very happily put my hand up and say, I'm happy to just accept that I have never experienced the most mind-blowing levels of sex and intimacy in my life. Because no matter what I've experienced and however good my sex life has been in the past, I'm leaving the door open to something much, 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 much greater. And I think most people that I work with sort of come at the process and say, okay, things were good for a while and we'd like to get back to that. Like, okay, things were good, but was that the best imaginable? Was that the best that it could possibly be? And do we even have an awareness of that? So, you know what? How about we just, like you say, surrender and just allow? Just actually, like I said, create the intention, create the clear, coherent thought. You can create the goal, but then just align with the process. And that process, again, is just being open and letting the mind do what it needs to do, create the beliefs that we actually need to fulfill that outcome. And then, as I said, let the universe take care of the details. You can say the mind is limitless. Just let the mind take care of the details if that feels more comfortable for you.
Yeah.
But essentially, we don't want to block.
So I want to shift gears a little here. And again, take a deep breath, anyone that's listening. Yeah. I want to talk about collective consciousness. It's a term that people may or may not be familiar with. And before we sat down to have this conversation, you and I spoke about the analogy of a flock of birds. Talk to me about collective consciousness and what does that mean to us as humans and to us as business owners?
Okay, so collective consciousness is what you see when you see a flock of birds, thousands of birds all flying, and they're all flying as one. All of them turn at the same time.
It's beautiful.
And you see it with it's beautiful. We see it with like schools of fish, and it's like none of them seem to be bumping into each other. Nobody's falling out of the sky. No fish are sort of bump. Everybody turns at precisely the same moment. It's like they're all operating from the one mind, and so now we have that. We're connected to that. We are, and if this makes sense, you are universal consciousness. So you are the universe. You are universal consciousness. There's that one mind, which we're all connected to, but you're also individuated. So you are a completely and wholly integrated and individuated biological reference point for universal consciousness. And we can sort of just take time to allow our mind to sort of expand around that and try and let that sink in for a moment. But so you are individuated and you're completely integrated. So it means that we're affected by others. We're affected by the thought fields and the atmospheres of belief of others. And all of those thought fields and all of those atmospheres of belief, of those individuated consciousnesses, they all add together and create this one consciousness, this one human mind, this one global mind. And so we look at that for all kinds of things, but it largely humanity exists with limitation. We've built all these rules around these things that we believe that can't happen and things that just can't be true. And then we subscribe to those. And then we subscribe to those via absorption. We literally just absorb them by witnessing other people live out those and play out those limitations. So we're born with kind of none of those. And then we just start downloading them from our parents and then, from other people around us. And a lot of those limitations are around, nothing's perfect. Life's hard, life's challenging, life's, good, childhood's fun, but then it's tough in adulthood and then, old age sucks and then you die.
Right.
And the thing is, it's not just a matter of saying, well, that's it, I'm going to change my belief. Because we do need to do that if we want to sort of break free of some of these limitations and these physical limitations about decrepitude in the body, about the body just breaking down at a certain age and tissues aging at a certain time. Aging is one huge limitation that I think is largely a learned process.
Yes.
The more I go into it, there's all these stories, written in ancient texts about human, ages in human civilization, when people were living much, more aligned with universal consciousness and living much, 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 much longer lifespans. And the more, or say the less aligned we are with those levels of universal truth or with that universal mind, well, then the faster things are going to break down. And like I said, it's not just a matter of us just changing our beliefs and saying, well, that's it, I'm going to switch and believe something different. Because then I go out in the street and I look and see everybody else acting out those same beliefs. And so I download those programs just by watching them and being absorbed and just absorbing them.
Data points.
And exactly. And so I've got a traumatic brain injury client who is really rigid. He's much older and he's really rigid in his thinking. And I get this sometimes with OCD cases and anxiety cases, and you'll have the but. And it's like when we talk about aging and function going down, I'll offer him, and his mind is literally there saying, I'm ready to change. I'm ready to, give you a new function. You can have some function back. And we'll say you can have this. And he'll literally sit in the chair and say, but nobody else has got it. Everybody, because I see it. Everybody else is getting older and slowing down. And well, do I even really need it? It's like we'll defend those limiting beliefs, And so to break free of it, we need to see the limitlessness that we have available, but we need to be able to see it in others as well, whether they're expressing it or not. And this is the thing, and it kind of makes the world a better place, is if you are that limitless level of mind, and you can say, if that for you is God's level, if that's consciousness, if that's spirit, if that's just higher self, however you see it, however you call it, if you are that limitless level of mind, you can't just see it in yourself. If you walk out into the street and you can see that spark of limitlessness in everybody else, well, then you're seeing yourself reflected. And when you see yourself reflected, well, then now you're downloading that same program back and reinforcing it into yourself. And so that's a huge thing. So don't look at the limitations of others, and if we feel charged by other people and things that other people are doing in any way, then the place we always need to start is the self. That's just something about me. That's just a piece of me that I haven't integrated back as whole yet, if I'm not able to see the limitlessness in somebody else.
So let's pause there, because I think that that's really critically important. So when you see something in someone else that you're like, oh, God, that triggers me, or, oh, gosh, why haven't they figured that out? Or, oh, gosh, whatever. It's potentially a mirror for yourself. What you're seeing is yourself in them, or in their actions or behaviors or thought patterns and things like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we can apply this to business, and we can apply this to how it works in the workplace. But essentially, if you feel a charge for someone,
yes,
then we are born whole, and there's whole energy, which is perfect. And then when we have wounds, or we have trauma, or we just have these life experiences, we split that whole energy into a dualistic energy. So we split something from being whole and perfect into a positive and a negative. And then we create perceptions around that. And so if I see something in someone that just charges me and triggers me, makes me feel like, I don't like that person, really, that's just a piece of me that I'm uncomfortable looking at. That's a piece of me that they're expressing that I've buried and I don't want to look at. So when I see it in someone else, it makes me feel horrible. So the place to start is me. The place to start is always the self. Now, if I'm in the workplace and I need to get things done, and I've got these different projects, and and I need a clear, cohesive unit, I need this one level of mind where everybody's functioning on the same level, and there's just intuition, and everybody knows when different people need to be included in a project or copied in on an email, and so we can all go into that flow state about the process. Well, if everybody recognizes that whenever there's a charge or something goes wrong, it's like, okay, that's not actually you, that's me. I can fix that. I can change that. And then, oh, look, wow, magically you changed. And now we can go back into flow again. So, and that whole one level of mind, that's something that, again, that I do and work with different clients, and I've done with a few different businesses. And what we do is we're integrating the beliefs of the consciousness of the organization. So the consciousness of the business, which is the business's mission, the business's vision. So what the business is striving to achieve, that's the consciousness of that organization. And if we can embed that into the employees or into the people that work within that, then everybody's operating about the same belief system. They're operating about at the same vibration. And when they're in the same vibration, then you're creating that collective flow state. And it's really interesting, some of the things that I've found. So people have found things getting more efficient and just more harmonious in the workplace. But I had one last week where the company they needed to recruit, and so they were putting in beliefs into everyone in the organization about the right people, the perfect people for our space find us, or the perfect people find themselves here. And one girl resigned shortly afterwards. And then speaking with the owner of the business, it was just like, yeah, no, that was 100% right. Actually, I hadn't realized, but she really wasn't the right person. Yeah. And when we crystallized that, we made that more clear in the mind. It made it more clear for her, and she left, which ultimately wasn't what I was projecting as the perfect result. But that ended up actually being, it might be short-term pain, but it's actually a long-term perfect result. And it's like, and that universal consciousness knows that. So, and that's kind of what we're working with.
And I imagine also, as a leader myself, I have teams and people. It is top down to show and reflect, and you have to do the work. You can't just sort of delegate it off to other people. So I can see the truth in that, and I imagine and actually challenge anyone that's listening. Thinking about your teams in the workplace, or even your teams in your household, your kids or spouse or otherwise. Are you a flock of birds working in perfect unison, or are there things that are not aligned? People bouncing into each other, triggering and falling in the sky.
Falling out of the sky.
Right, all the things, I think everybody wants a cohesion. They want alignment. They want to each individually be in their flow state. And I appreciate what you said there about focusing when you see something that's triggering you and someone else, focusing on yourself first, because you ultimately only have control over yourself, your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, your choices. You cannot control other people's, right? Especially in the workplace. So yeah, it really resonates with me when you say it in that way.
Yeah, look, and I think that's that limitless ability. Like you can, again, via that, you can bring others into resonance with you. And look, I do this with conflict resolution. You can hold that clear, coherent thought for peace, perfection, love, life, and just say, you know what, like this person is really, really agitated at the moment. I can see they're really aggressive. I'm not going to go over there right now and ask this question or speak to them because I'm very likely to sort of cop a bullet right between the eyes.
Yeah.
So, you know what, I'm just going to sit for 2 minutes and I'm just going to get clear about the vibration that I want this person to experience, which is peace, perfection, just good intentions, loving intentions, or, I want to hold intentions for this person's highest good, and my intention is that they'll get it. And what that does, and I use this in parenting, I use this with my kids, is I think I want to be a more highly evolved parent.
Yes.
So when my kids do something that makes me feel like I want to express one of I want to express my parental software, which is, my parents used to just smack. And I look at that and think, okay, I want to do better than that.
Yes.
But I don't know how. How do I do that? All I've got in my DNA, all I've got in my experience is like mum and dad would just pull the belt out. So how do I do this? How do I do this so they get the message? It's like, okay, I'm just going to set a clear intention for understanding, perfection in communication, and a more highly evolved level of mind as a parent. That's my intention. And then when I go and sit down, what happens is I find myself, because I'm sticking to my intention, instead of just jumping off and yelling like my mother used to, or, speaking quietly and then pulling the belt out like my father used to,
Yes.
I find myself thinking, actually, I don't know what to say here. I don't know how to do that. I'm just going to listen for a moment because what I've got that's about to come out is an old program. It's not what I want to say. So I'm just going to listen to my kid for a moment. And then the answer comes to me. And then I find myself, I get to deliver the message. And I find we end up sort of hugging, and the child gets the message, and then I get the message coming back to me from the child saying, "Oh, I just need to make the right decision. That's what I actually need to do, isn't it, Dad?" Yeah, no, it is, mate. You just need to think about it, And they're giving it back to me rather than me just having belted them and sent them to their room crying and saying, "Don't do that again." And the child's really no wiser.
Yeah.
And so then I have changed that behaviour in that individual via my intention because I've changed myself first. And that changes the conscious interaction.
Brilliant. Scott, I can only imagine what it is like to be in your household if you were my dad. Or, I would just think, imagine it has to be, it has to be inspirational. And I also imagine that you probably flub it up every now and again too, because you're human.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
We're human. Absolutely.
We're all human.
Yeah.
And so I
Completely.
I think it's so great that you have shared so much insight in today's episode. And I really encourage you guys, if whatever Scott has shared intrigues you, I highly recommend checking out his website, thebrainguy.co. You can also find him on Instagram and Facebook. We'll put all those links in our show notes over at thesimplifierspodcast.com. There's so much to this, and I think bit by bit, you can break this down into small, easy to understand bits and pieces. And it's like you say, you're just taking that deeper download into your thought process, your brain, your beliefs, and into everything, your subconscious. And bit by bit, more and more becomes lit up and inside you, right?
Absolutely. And I was going to say, look, I'm really grateful to get to be here and have the conversation. I love what you're doing with, simplifying things, because really what I speak about and what I talk about and what I work with people is something that people view as an incredibly complex topic. But that's just our human perception. We make things more complex than they need to be because we've placed a value on that. We've placed a limiting belief where we believe that something can only be good if it's really complex, and you can only earn a really, really good wage or a good earning income if nobody else can understand what you're doing, because then there's nobody else that can have that job. But something like the brain, we can just make it more simple. Just slow it down, and just understand just the parts that we need to. We don't need to understand all the circuits and all the different pathways. We can just access the parts of the mind that we need, and we do that via that clear, coherent intention. So just hold clear, coherent intention, continue to place your attention on that intention, and then just be in the process. And that's basically all we need to do.
To achieve a flow state is possible, and I think that there are so much to this that it's just It's as if you're taking an onion and you're peeling back one layer at a time to get true to the center and the core. There's so much that we have conditioned onto our life, and we've put those layers on as either protective measures or coping mechanisms or otherwise. So I really appreciate that. And I encourage you guys, if you're listening to this and you are intrigued by Scott and the work that he does in the world, again, go to his website. You can find more information, see loads of videos there as well. But also, he does stress transformation sessions with clients that help people, and I've gone through one myself, to help you get to the core of whatever belief or stress is sitting inside you, and help you, again, to take those layers off of it, to diffuse the intensity of it, to see what truly is at work, and to get relief, I think, as well. So again, his website is thebrainguy.co, and you can find more information there and in our show notes. So Scott, I have a few questions as we wrap up. And again, I'm so grateful for your time and for your wisdom and sharing this today. So these questions I'd like to ask everybody that comes onto the podcast. First and foremost, what is one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
So I would say, I think the greatest book that I've read that just challenges the belief system and just makes us break things down and just open up to a whole new level of mind is The Energy Cure. The Energy Cure by William Bengston. It's one of those books that you just can't put down. I won't say too much about it other than it's a page turner. You can't put it down. And it will really, if you want to expand your mind about what's possible, because once you have that level of expanded awareness, you can apply that to any area of your life. It doesn't have to be just health and healing. But that's an incredibly interesting book. Amazing stories in that one.
Good.
And I think anything that where you have guys who are, or people who are breaking down these complex topics like the brain, the mind, and then applying and kind of crossing that bridge, which is what I try and do, really cross that bridge between science and spirit, because, it's like true science and true religion, or true science and true spirit, they're not arguing, they're not fighting, they're trying to say the same thing.
Yes.
It's just the people who've aligned with what we call pseudoscience or fake science, who, they're cheering for their team, like very passionately. And so they say there can't be any spirit, or there can't be any, religion involved in that. And the same thing with the people who are kind of involved in religion for the masses. It's like a lot of those people, basically say like, no, it's our way and there's no other way. Like what science is saying is just not right. But true science, true religion, they're trying to say the same thing. So anybody who's like Joe Dispenza, Deepak Chopra, those guys, I think are amazing.
Yeah, 100% agree. I am aligned with that as well. I don't think one or the other is right or wrong. I think there's a mix of both. And again, that brings back to the neutrality of things. I think that when you realize that, you don't get sucked into the polarization in society of Republicans versus Democrats, black versus white, this versus that. It's just, is it a trope? Is it something that's a distraction? Is it a noise? Is it possible that both could be equally beautiful and wonderful and wise? So,
and we don't need the answers. Just place your attention on it.
Yeah.
And just be with it.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like we could have a part 2, but Scott, I have to keep on target. Keep on target. So the next question is this. Tell me, who's one person in your personal circle that you just feel is up to brilliant things? We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll also have them on the podcast. So
there's a lovely girl I know by the name of Jackie Bressick, who is an entrepreneur, and she's just amazing. So I have worked with Jackie for a long period of time, and she's one of the people who kind of experiences that limitless level of mind, because she saw the value in what we were doing early on, and we were just clearing pain early on for her, but then she just saw her life improving and literally just going into flow. And so everything I've talked about, she lives. And so she is constantly sending her friends and people to me, because she's constantly just walking around. Well, she's not sending them. There's people asking, what's the secret? What's going on? But she's just constantly walking around saying, like, I've literally just never been so happy. And my business is in flow. My business is booming. Everything, I've got the right people that I want. Everything's, is just perfect. And she's just literally just living everything that I've been talking about. And it's like she's just kind of committed to a process and just said, like, you know what, we're up leveling the mind. I'm just going to come back each week and up level the mind and just keep going, and just whatever happens, happens. And again, she's just put herself in that process. And yeah, so she's been just doing amazing things, just in business, but just life and happiness, which I just think is beautiful.
Love it. Well, we will link her up in the show notes. If people want to find her and see what she's up to, you can find that over at the simplifierspodcast.com. So I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. What are you grateful for today?
What am I not grateful for today? I'm grateful to get to be here and do this. I'm grateful for the work we got to do beforehand.
Yes.
I'm grateful for the perfection in every single moment of the day, and I am incredibly grateful just to be able to have that awareness, because I sort of look at, I guess, all the years that I went without having that awareness, and it's a beautiful space to get to exist in. So I'm probably most grateful for having the awareness of the perfection that I now get to experience in every single moment.
And I'm grateful for you. And I appreciate whenever I see people who are truly in a flow state with the work that they do in the world. And work doesn't necessarily be your career, but like the work you do, the life task, as you say, it's beautiful to watch and experience as well. Yeah.
Thank you. It's lovely. I really appreciate it. It's lovely to get to be here and share it.
Yeah. So his website is thebrainguy.co. And again, the links are in the show notes. My final question for you today is this, Scott. And again, thank you so much for your time. Someone somewhere is listening to you and I right now, and she's going, wow, maybe there is something to this. Maybe there is something way bigger that I had not even had a moment in my super busy schedule to even comprehend. What's one teeny tiny little thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
I would just say, so slow down, look to slow down, slow the mind down, and just get past that conscious noise, that conscious level of stress. And the one that I encourage, well, there's a bunch of different ones I encourage, but one that I think is really, really helpful at is just a whole brain posture. Cross one ankle over the other, cross one wrist over the other. Put your palms together and interlace your fingers and just sit for a couple of minutes. And just sit for a couple of minutes. And then once you've sat for a couple of minutes, the world will have slowed down. You will have equilibrated the electrical noise across the hemispheres in the brain. And you'll feel a little bit less stressed. You'll feel a little bit slower. And then if you want to start asking for truth and holding some clear intentions or just trying to get some intuition, that's a much better space to start from. So if you've listened all the way through to the end of this now, then you have my gratitude, my deep appreciation and gratitude. Yes. But if you're still listening, then I would say, and you're thinking, how do I do this? Where do I even start? That's a fantastic place. Whole brain posture, cross one ankle, cross a wrist, palms together, interlace the fingers, and then just sit quietly for at least a couple of minutes, and then just hold an intention. Hold intention for what you want. Might be truth, might be perfection, could be peace, whatever you decide that you want to hold, and then answers can start to come from there.
Scott, big love to you.
Same right back. Thank you very much, Mary.